I'm John Lurs. I'm a friend of Katie and Jacob's, and I will be doing the introductions. So I'm going to introduce Jacob first, and he's going to read. Then I'll introduce Katie, and she will read. Jacob Eigen recently published The 21st Century, his first book of poems, which won the APR Honickman First Book Prize. It's a portentous title as we hurtle our way into the second quarter of what we will eventually come to understand as our present, which is maybe why the book begins with a prosy poem called The Difficult Years and imagines the communal we of its speakers as, quote, roaches retreating into the walls, dreaming our useless wings might finally transform and allow us to fly. Not a bad image for a poetry reading, or for just the reading of poetry in the dark, fretful days of 2025. A few lines later, another voice breaks in with an italicized question. Are we dead? You would ask. And yet we were still talking, as if to suggest the peculiar persistence of poetry, not unlike the resilience of roaches in the face of humanity's bewildering vulnerability. The poems in Jacob's book situate themselves on this existential threshold, pondering it from multiple perspectives that range from the soberly philosophical and the coolly descriptive to the earnestly emotional and the obliquely comic. Never. The committed fatalism made me think of Kafka without all the anxiety. And the streams of shining images made me think of Fellini without all the womanizing. But the poems take us across the globe with stops in Australia, in the Middle East, and in the wide expanses of ocean and jungle. They always seem to circle back to the New York City of a curious, sensitive young man, wondering what it is he and we are doing in the world. More than once, I found myself affectionately writing boy in the margins. When Jacob and I met, we talked about the pleasures and the terrors of writing, mostly the terrors, of course. And he described the composition of this book with the eminently 20th century metaphor of making a mixtape. This made me love him. I thought of this obsolete image while reading one of the last poems in the collection, Boethius's Body, where he quotes the medieval sage. Take unity away from a thing, and existence too ceases. In Jacob's case, the obverse also seems to follow. Granting unity in the form of a mixtape or a poetry collection generates existence. And when he is gone, the 21st century will still be here.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for that. I'm recovering from the introduction. I'm almost reluctant to read the poems now. And thanks so much, Katie, for inviting me to do this and putting it together. And thanks, James, and to the bookstore. It's a thrill to do it. The returning guests. We now entered the next phase of the evening. Soon we would receive our seat assignments, someone would make a speech, dinner would be served. But in the meantime, we waited, chatting in small circles as the air grew cold. The women, bare-shouldered, began to reach into their purses for scarves. And with less and less to say, we found ourselves listening to the sound of the sea. The distant waves pulling each other in, one after the other in meaningless repetitions. And yet, we thought, the bubbles in our glasses are still rising. Why this was a contradiction, we weren't sure. But there they were, going up and up and up, as though what? And then we looked up as well, and the chairs were all gone, the tables too, and someone we'd never met was motioning us into a tent saying, "Come on, come right now. They've already started without you." Soul. Crushed by its parents' union, it foams up and spills over into the realm of substance. What it needs, it takes by controlling muscles or producing sounds. Only the sensation of motion reminds it that wherever it had existed swaying, which is why its parents put it to sleep in the sob, driving in circles. Not much is asked of it, to feed, to grow. Naturally, it distinguishes between things that are warm and moving and those that are cold and still. In no category can it place objects like pinwheels, which move without being touched. Now it's a child. It doesn't know why playing some video games makes it nervous. A man falls through green rings, a car jumps over missing sections of an elevated highway. It explodes these surrogate bodies and eerie music gets stuck in its head. Then it goes downstairs to eat granola bars while its mother makes dinner. The warm things are living. The cold things are dead. Well, what does this mean? Its grandfather is dead. This much it knows because it sits in a limo and its cousin gives it a huge gray vitamin when she has no candy and doesn't know what else to do. But what about the Xeroxes its father sometimes gives it, still warm from the green light? Everything exists twice, once for the adults, once for the children, so that it never knows if it lives in the echo or the original sound. It looks at its body in the mirror. This, it thinks, will enter the adult world. But it doesn't. Even in high school, it seems to be the same body, always the same. In college, it argues about Plato, the idea that the soul maintains an independent existence untouched by life, like a jacket left under the seat at a theater. It argues with men and also with a woman who says more adamantly that the body is a thing, a thing. It argues because it disagrees, but also because it likes hearing the woman say this. The woman vanishes. It goes to the gym and causes itself pain, kisses breasts and necks in bed, chews tobacco, lives according to its estimate of its needs until it resolves this is not its life. Then it lies in bed and hangs its head over the edge of the mattress like a bat. Here we are in the night, it says to itself. The room is dark. The air is cold. The superintendent never fixed the window. It falls asleep and dreams of the shimmering green, sheer plastic grass its parents stuffed into Easter baskets. Was all of that really just plastic cellophane? It asks itself. Yes, it answers. And no. Like the argument about what to send into space. Its friend said Shakespeare, but it wanted to send slips of paper from Chinese fortune cookies so that many years from now, the aliens might find something that said, "Good luck is coming your way." And the alien scientists, exhausted in their plastic ships, breathing the artificial air, might think, could it be they are right, these extinct humans? Nothing lasts. That's what it thinks. But why does it think this, shaking its head, as if it were telling a brilliant joke? The Southern Hemisphere. They are out there somewhere, the lovers at summer camp. It's February here. That means they must be on the other side of the equator. Soon, their counselors will arrive in golf carts, shining flashlights to herd them back to their bunks. Therefore, they take this time to whisper nothings to each other. Nothing, 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 they whisper in Australian accents. All of this will be nothing. A journal entry describing the scent of grass in the dark. belonging in the heart of the vizier. As the vizier stood on his balcony and watched the domes surface from the darkness, he felt that sensation he had felt as a boy, hearing girls laugh at a distance. Only now, the sensation was more unfathomable, coming late in life, after experience had taught him that those girls and he himself were nothing but decorated pots of blood. A blue light shimmered across the finials with a strange but familiar glow. Had he seen it before at the Quicksilver mine in Idria, or on the pile of iridescent squid the ink merchant gutted at the Yarmouk Bazaar? He squinted his eyes and listened. A group of birds rose all at once. A door opened. A whip somewhere stung a horse. And something else, a jangling noise beneath all this, bright but far away, as if the Sultan's concubines were shaking the silver on their ankles in one of the locked rooms. But looking down, the vizier saw this was just the sound of the prisoners dragging their chains through the sand, on their way to the executions he himself had scheduled for the rising of the sun. October. When he was a spider, exuding thread between rocks, he considered his earlier life as a man and recalled with objective curiosity the belief that pleasure, true pleasure, constituted achievement. Yes, he told the fly as he bounded. I remember lying in bed in Queens and watching snow accumulate on the windowsill when I didn't know what I was or what to kill to be happy. I'd bike down Northern Boulevard to the Thai place, thinking of the nights I'd spent on a woman's couch, the way we'd talk about nothing, the Nigerian student in her middle school, or the watch I'd look at in the department store while my mother tried things on. That was your problem, said the fly, which looked fearless and elegant now, no longer even beating its wings. I too lived in Queens, but I never left my apartment. Balancing the takeout on your handlebars, weaving your way through the slush. What did you think you would find out there? And with that, it extended its palpus to suck in the toxins that would dissolve it into bones and fluids overnight. Yeah. Can you guys hear in the back okay? Am I projecting it? Okay, great. Lessons in physics. At the end of a game of miniature golf, your ball entered a pipe that went somewhere you couldn't see and made a saddish being swallowed sound. This could happen to anything at any time, your brother explained. A wormhole could come into existence spontaneously and suck it in. Is this why some things clung together so desperately? Like the filaments of iron your science teacher kept sealed in a Ziploc bag because she said if they ever touched the magnet directly, they would never let it go. In an airless plastic bag tied with a knot, a few crickets always died on the way back from the pet store, and the rest fed on their corpses. Then you covered all of them with white calcium powder, like room temperature snow, and dropped them into the lizard's tank where they sang in the darkness. What would they sing? Nothing. They just sang themselves. Cricket, cricket, cricket. The captain's parrot. The parrot recalled those phrases the captain had taught it in its youth. Heave-ho ahead and a pirate's life for me. But when it uttered them now, the captain gave it a mournful look, or told it to shut up, or even flicked it painfully with a bootlace. When the parrot instead tried imitating what it heard from the captain more recently, the weeping, the sighs, he beat it even harder. But what else could it do? It could only sing what it heard. So it learned to imitate the ocean slapping the flank of the boat, the ice clinking in the captain's glass, and even the snap of the whip that hit it. That was how we found it, in a bad state, living in a cage filled with its own dried feces and shed feathers, with the sounds of the world inside it. I'm going to read now a couple of, if I can find them, slightly longer poems in sections. There we go. The Boy in the Jungle. 1. Why don't you sing at the festival? The elders asked him. But he preferred the swamp, the filth of it, the beetles hatching from mounds of elephant dung, the slugs copulating so slowly they seemed to die on top of each other as they sank into the rot of the leaves. He waded in muck up to his calves and sang. And as his voice echoed, it became deeper and deeper and farther away. 2. He loved the swamp as long as he was singing inside it. But in the morning, scratching his ankles and tonguing the grit in his teeth, he had to admit it looked worse in the day. The slugs that had clutched each other armlessly in the dark had all disappeared. Only their cobwebby junk remained. The frogs hummed on, and everything was just what it was. Flatulent mists rising from a planet and toucans screeching as if they were drunk. 3. At the festival, the elders poured honey wine through the sockets of ancestral skulls, and everyone, even his own parents, danced and traded partners in the totem's gaze, while the singers, his brother among them, sang the rain song, the war song, the song of the hunt. Someday you will understand these rituals, his mother said, but there was nothing here of the swamp, only the crocodile, skinned and deep-toothed, spinning on a spit. 4. What should I do? He asked it as it revolved and dripped streams of oil that sizzled up from the open flame. I want to sing, he said, but I do not want to sing for victory, fecundity, or slaughter. The crocodile did not reply, and the slave cranking the spit, whose only duty was to stand in the heat and perform this single action for hours, looked up from his work and asked, "Why do you talk to something dead?" 5. So the boy returned to the swamp where the silence was louder than ever, and the water bugs beat their wings over the surface, searching always for food. And again, his voice echoed and was transformed, returning in the tone of one much older, so that he felt as though this was the voice capable of advising him, if only it could say something other than what he said. How are you guys doing while standing? Okay. I'm going to read a couple more. The wind. 1. The numerical order. From the snow, a shape is forming. The outline of a man as he walks away from Queens Boulevard in the cabs in the evening. He passes the glowing windows at the gas station, the trash heaps. Some things cannot be weighed, he remembers Leibniz saying. And some things cannot be measured, but there is nothing which cannot be numbered. This axiom applies to everything, he thinks, even him, one man in the snow. 2. The fish sticks. The fish sticks look especially dead tonight, as though they were not the reprocessed flesh of fish, but themselves used to swim and have eyes. They are dead, and so they have nothing to say about the window rattling in the wind or about being consumed. Only the moon in the window seems to say, and yet, as in, and yet here I am, moving through the dark. 3. Bedtime. Soon he too will be sleeping, and the world will continue without him. The birds will eat wood, and the men in blue hats will come for the recycling. 1, 2, 3, he counts in the dark room. Sheep or something else we can't see. The only other thing speaking is the car alarm, set off by nothing, cycling through tones in the distance. I think I'll just do one more. Thank you guys all again so much for listening and coming. Epithalamium. Think, however, of the moment the scent of seaweed first enters your rented car, reminding you and the person next to you it's all right to mate with each other. Other organisms do it. Other organisms even let themselves die after years of clinging to shells like little invisible white knuckles. Enough music for now, you say. And the road, you know, belongs to the wind and the insects, seems for those miles to belong to you too.
Wow.
Right. Thank you.
Good job. To introduce Katie Peterson, I could tell you how she has published 7 books of poetry. I could tell you how she is professor and chancellor's fellow at the University of California, Davis, where she also directs the program in creative writing. I could tell you about all the prizes and recognitions that she's won. But I don't think any of us here love Katie for her official accomplishments. So what I really want to tell you about is the poem Spring that opens up her 2013 collection, The Accounts, because it was the gateway drug of my Katie Peterson addiction. Indeed, there was a period in my life where every time I got drunk, which was often, I would take up Spring as if it was the goal I'd been drinking towards. This was such a regular occurrence that my partner Arturo began saying, "Ah, I see it's now the time of the night when we read Katie Peterson," knowing that I would soon be passed out in bed. The incipient unconsciousness that repeatedly found me sleeping with Spring receives its own articulation in the deft and dreamlike way that the poem allows the reading of literature to shade into the world outside it. It begins with an attempt to read King Lear, but the speaker quickly admits that they, quote, end up drinking red wine and talking about the tropics. The murmur of trope and tropics drunkenly twisting these various activities into a fluid spiral. In the next section, the speaker is sleeping while their lover is finishing Tess of the D'Urbervilles, the beguiling part where Tess drowses on the altar at Stonehenge. The echoes across these registers of hazy consciousness blur any clear-cut sense of identity, and the figures in the poem blend more or less explicitly into the characters of the novel. But it's in the last section, with a series of ecstatic lines that will never stop thrilling me, that the poem comments on this fantastic transmigration of text into world. Katie writes, "Everything, everything, and before everything, the possibility of something else. The moment when a moral gets minced by an account a body makes of any other body, and time takes place instead of taking time." There's a lot to say, but I will limit myself to the way the erotics here figure the interpenetration of literature and life, to let language, with all its fleeting meanings, take something like physical form. In doing so, it grabs a loose hold of fleetingness itself and imparts a sense of literary majesty, of aesthetic significance, to the fragile transience that links the tragic worlds of Lear and Tess to the loss of the speaker's mother in the poem's final line. What I'm trying to do with this analytic break from the standard genre of the poetry reading introduction is not just to give Katie the highest tribute that I can as a committed close reader. It's also to give you a concrete sense of what I think of as the intellectual muscularity of her work. The sense I often have when reading her books that there is thinking, even a kind of philosophical argument, happening on the page. When she asked me to introduce her at tonight's reading, she told me that she, quote, might just be a prima donna and read new poems, and followed up by saying that she was, quote, loving 50 so far, not giving a shit what anyone thinks is real. I don't know about you, but I'm happy to watch this prima donna pirouette through whatever literary fantasy she likes.
What did people ask of each other? On board ship, sailing toward a war you didn't make, or after that in the time of the athletes, when we used games to find out who was stronger, or now in the time of the babies, crawling together on a cotton mat embroidered with balloons, a numbered clock and a large sun smiling next to a sleeping moon, spread out in the middle of the room to help them know what time might be, even before they could learn to tell it. And right this minute, when our baby is about to roll over and surprise us with what we've made, people asked each other to be brave. I'm so happy to see all of you tonight. We celebrate, in some sense, belatedly the birthday of Jacob's book. I wasn't here on the day that it was born. So
Thank you for reading of it.
this is it.
Yes.
And we're also celebrating the birthday of John Lurse. So if you'd like, after we can all sing him happy birthday. But it's an auspicious occasion for these and other reasons. And I was so happy to hear what John said about a poem, Spring, that I actually wrote at the Sheraton Commander, sitting next to the great poet Fanny Howe, who was also writing a poem on that day that mentions King Lear. And in a sense, both of those poems were born here in this bookstore, which is the poetry heart, along with the Woodbury of this place, Cambridge. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to read tonight, I just started thinking about reading. And I read a book, which is a collection of Proust's writing about the art critic John Ruskin. And a line from it, I wrote it down because it sort of reminded me of John and because it reminded me of poetry, and I wanted to read it to you. We feel quite truly that our wisdom begins where that of the author ends, and we would like to have him give us answers when all that he can do is give us desires. So with that, I'm going to read some poems about reading, which to me has something to do with the hope that we can make a transformation without hurting each other. So this first poem I'm going to read is from Fog and Smoke, and I'm looking at some of you, and I know some of you have heard it before. It's called The Walk to the Road When Dinner Was Over, and it's set on a dirt road in the Deep Springs Valley in California. And I think the thing you have to imagine is a couple of people talking about philosophy, and by that I mean talking about everything that matters. The walk to the road when dinner was over. And this is a misquotation from Plato's Republic. It's a strange image, he said, and strange persons you're telling of. They're like us, I said. Together we watched the stars come out in their inequality. Venus at the edge of the valley and lower than Mars, who for a time upstaged the moon. I walk alongside the barbed wire, grateful for what I can't control, the alignment of your thoughts with mine. It's delicate. Men abandon women for years or socially, and do you think women can't feel it? But oh, the sweetness of one man overrides the rest, and no argument can undo it. Do you know the soul doesn't scatter? isn't a thing that can be scattered. The soul doesn't scatter after death, but goes wherever it came from, so it matters when you die if you've tried to have an imagination. Most men say they would give birth if they could. When you're old, you say, you'll go to your children in their households with tools until you can't. You're going further, the place in the mind where memory gets kept. Go if you need to. One lamb escaped from the slaughter. She's in the pen with the whole summer, a whole Sierra in her eyes at sunset. It is not advice I give you, but the kind of blessing that comes from the bewildered heart. If you want to walk through a field of flowers, you must also walk at night. The friends you lost, like bodies buried, navigate the earth. They're walking or they're at a dinner party, and you're furthest from their mind. You can always look at the moon, crescent moving into Leo, and somehow this is good for you. You can do things to the moon in the desert. You can make it stand still. You can make it move. You climbed the mountain with me, a recovering moralist. You wanted to stay on the path. I wanted to find it. November, making a list of people who can be trusted. The one who said the owl's who woke her up from a dream of a winged horse. I trusted the poet who wrote, "Death is harder for the dying, though it hurts the living more." The place you imagine people go when all of this is over, no one lies there. No one misleads you the way they do on Earth. I wanted to know how to behave when the worst isn't over, but the best hasn't shown up yet. I don't believe the argument ended. Try to be good versus say what's true. I'm standing in the dead center, that place called the middle distance, taking the place of heaven, the mountains we could die in if we traveled without water. Sound rustles through the ranch. Don't blink. The beautiful is sometimes the good. Don't get excited, not all the time. They won't say thinking was the only thing I did. I metabolized what other people thought into the facts of how they felt. There's no one for miles. That road leads nowhere, into the mountains, to an old mining claim, populated on paper, given a mayor, used for a voting scam. In the time of miracles, you could change your mind by falling off a horse. This isn't that time. We could just become shapes on a night like this. We could walk into space and become clouds. They will say to us, "What did you do in those days to survive?" We married each other. So when I was thinking about this reading, I was thinking that each of the poems that I wanted to share with you tonight is a little bit like a short story in a way. And the next one I wrote during the wildfires in California in 2021. And it refers to a map online that you could look at and like click on to see where the fires were. And there are a couple poems in this book about the wildfires in California. And I guess what I really wanted to say to all you about it is I wanted to write poems in that moment where I talked about those things, not as contemporary things, but as things that in 100 years, if someone read this poem, they would know something of what I was talking about. And that was a sort of absurd thing to do, right? Talking about a map that you click on you kind of feel like in 100 years, all the AI is going to mean that you don't have to click on a map. You just have to think the word map and all of a sudden the information is going to get downloaded or something like that. But I say that to say, in a way, I don't think the poem is about the wildfires. It's about what it means to be forced into a position in which reading your experience feels like a desperate and necessary act. The fire map. Their symbols are single flames. Each fire requires a pretty name. Apple, blue jay, coyote. They earned those names by starting where they did. And you can find them if you pause the arrow on the map and press with your finger, but not too hard. If you do that, you'll be sent back to the first map, laid out in its bordered shape, the template of the state. This isn't what you wanted to see. But once there, you can advance investigating fires from previous years whose symbols are the same, placed differently on identical maps since the terrain hasn't changed its surface, though the water table would tell a different story. Paradise and its shotgun canyons a few years back. A fire in Trinity, the previous, that turned into a complex. They call a fire a complex when it grows, merging with the blaze that began in lava beds. That perimeter included nearly half a national monument. But see, you can no longer find those names. Last decade's rim fire simply reads contained. The symbols turn red the year we're in. They gray them for each year that's gone before. The current map changes with the hour. Look, the sheep fire just showed up on the shadowed topography near Lassen, where 2 years ago another fire raged south of Susanville, town named for a miner's daughter, which didn't have a post office or bank until 3 years after its name became official, or so they teach you in school. The map says it's just 3% contained, but like all numbers, these mislead, as success isn't about amount for those who fight, but some cessation of agility. If the fire can jump, can they keep up? A fire can burn contained much longer than it does what it came to do. Under these symbols, the map of California wrinkles like a sheet on a sad bed. Easy to fix, but hard to make right. When one remains preoccupied with troubles as the relationship that happened there caused you to abandon the basics of care and has assumed a quality of being impossible to end or heal, since getting out means leaving for good. So you wonder, will you be followed for years by all you've said and done? They colored the map where the land deserved it. The desert shouldn't claim everything the eye can see from space. Doesn't water deserve a better color than white? But just as many flames live there in the green spaces where mountains hold and give the snowpack that diminishes each year. Red in the present tense, they are nearly festive, like lights on trees. Incidents on the wane turn a darker green. The map disappears 5 years after they make it. 12 years ago was awful. Now it's gone. You'd have to talk to someone who lived through those fires to find out what burned. In no year does this map record our smoke. I'm just going to read one more poem from this book. And this is a poem that actually got picked up for that podcast, The Slowdown. Any of you guys listened to that? One of the things Major Jackson said about it was that the pronouns in the poem, he said, kind of talked about the way that in this country, we have this way of sometimes referring to some people as Americans and some people not as Americans. And we have these subtle ways of doing it somehow through pronouns. And I also wanted to read it because there's something in here that refers to you and Arturo, actually. There's a thing in here about you guys and dogs. So, and I remembered it kind of walking over here. So that's for you. The rest of it is for the rest of you. And then I'm going to read some new poems. So this poem is called Americans. He lost his job. He didn't know what to say to his family, so he sat in the train station all afternoon and told each person waiting a different story. She made a quilt for her baby. She had to sell it for money, and since it worked the first time, she did it again. Now she sells everything she makes to other people. He didn't have enough to bring his parents over, so they died in a place where he could never visit them. He had to marry her to keep her here. Rain, snow on the monument to the boats that settled the fishing town on the northern spit in a state most of us will never visit. More snow on the pass where people died when they had to eat pine branches than each other. Enough wind to make the government warn us. She grew up on that land, but never owned it. He owned it years ago and lost it in a game. She didn't grow up here, but she planted poppies, wild iris, suncups, lupins. Those native plants you see, she planted them all. Seeds she ordered from another state. She had an idea the soil could be reminded. Not that soil has ever lived for pleasure. She thought she could make an agreement with it. He couldn't help his children with their homework. She never had children, only ideas. Together, the two of them built this house, and together let it rot in rain and weather. Were they taking their loneliness out on each other? Did they simply not understand abundance, the way in which it asks you to quit asking? He loved his partner's dogs more than his partner, and they were very beautiful. Who could blame him? A silver gray sheepdog and a spotted heeler. It made her so mad when he went to that church, she quit getting up in the morning. She decided her world should just be night. When they were in public, he said, only speak English. The boats they used to own ended up firewood. What beautiful fires our houses made that winter. So I'm here to read with Jacob, which is so exciting. And I really love Jacob's book. And I wanted to say, some of you know I'm a religious person, but those of you who know that don't know that there's like one prescription in my church, which is that it's a sin to come into a bookstore like this and not buy a book. So don't sin in my church. Buy a book. Buy the 21st century. And the other reason why I'm here is because I'm doing a residency at the James Merrill House in Stonington, Connecticut. And I happen to be lucky enough to be working during the day in James Merrill's apartment. And I've heard that it's a cliche for writers to write poems about residencies they do, but I've never really done a residency like this. So it's not a cliche for me. And last year I spent the year in England. So I lived in England, I came back to California, and now I'm in Connecticut. And to me, this felt like this really weird kind of carriage return, right? Like I was in one place, I was in a totally different place, and now I'm like somewhere in the middle. I'm starting to feel normal again. And this poem is about what it feels like to sort of be in one landscape, but like a lot of us, have other ones somehow right behind the eyes. Landscape. I lived 1 year in England, and 1 summer later, I came back to the state where I was born, California, where my garden grew extravagant in my absence, banking itself with hydrangeas that bloomed and dried into dozens of colors, ranging from skin to fabric. When September came, I drove to Connecticut to sleep in the apartment of James Merrill's familiar spirit, David Jackson. And right in the office, the famous poet made himself a closet, converted into a bookish den with a daybed and a view of the harbor, and a bookcase of poetry from the 20th century, forgotten names on every spine, slim as mail slots. I drove there in the dark. The streets carry the same names as the next village over, water and wall and bridge, because the frontier became tradition here. The carrying of cargo, human and whale oil and timber, and the stitches of the hobnail comforter didn't interfere with its softness or the way its printed leaves simulated palms in rain. The sheets were also soft. People of this town swim. The school bus comes on time, and a woman who loves to do it helps small children out, straightens their backpacks, tells them it would be fine. The librarians appear to be paid and kind. They find a person looking what they need. Views out windows change, subject to daily gestures of space and time, And in one window, slashed by a positioned shelf, glass bottles intensify and rearrange the colors of the sunset. A pink fade like a peach at the center, burning next to blue bottles placed near the sashes and the frame. A flock of birds displays the candor of their culture. Even the fearful swim past the buoy into glare, talking all the way. Pleasure outdistances what came before. It cancels places one has been. It silences the voices of those landscapes. It does not protect its habit of erasure. It does not have to. So I want to read a poem about a dream I had, and I had a hard time thinking about how to write this down. And I usually write in the mornings. And the thing about this poem that's a little weird for me is that I wrote it in the evening. And the thing about me after the hour of like 8 p.m. is like I turn into like the worst version of my possible self. Like I have an almost 8-year-old, like it's just terrible. And yet when I wrote this down, I realized that I had become economical and ruthless about putting the details on the page because I was so tired. And my mother died in 2008. My father died a few years ago. And those of you who are mourners know that for mourners, the imagination becomes capable of almost anything. Reprieve. My mother died before my father. And when my father died years after, I was given a reprieve. A half-life happens to the newly dead in the mourner's mind. Into the half-life, half-death, my father entered, then inhabited just after he left that space, which was a natural location like a redwood grove where light gets trapped in shafts or pools. Traveling through the canopy's arrangement, my mother came. She must have walked or found her way without a path, or what she carried in human arms, or on the back of some animal also granted that privilege or experience. She came to see my father from the further place, the very end. I remember the church in the redwoods we attended past summers near the ocean, some Sundays before swimming on Shell Beach. Not a structure, but a location and a time and place where people believed if they arrived together, the mass would follow, though the information stayed unposted. The music sewed refrains into your dress. You carried it. The singers repeated their measures enough times for everyone to follow, including children who sang in the forest with little shame, even children old enough to be shamed. No altar, only people who believed they could recognize a living Jesus if he appeared again, fresh from the bakery, the body given out and made so tasty, religion became a picnic. I leapt from a star towards you, crossed the dark water of proverbial night. In those months of my father's early death, my mother itched towards something slightly impossible, casting herself towards where she must have been told he might be, since the dead must be told everything at the end. Distances disappeared. This isn't the hardest thing I've ever imagined. Love's done much more with less to work with on earth. When the priest left the redwood grove, the grove returned to the natural world, a little older. No one was invited in the winter. Leisure returned to television and the suburbs with worship. When my father died, I didn't quite believe it. Did my mother come to join me in my lie, or did she come to bring me to the truth? A judge's daughter, she would be good at either. Not me. I could only be good at imagination. I placed them hand in hand like a matchmaker, saw them together like a couple winding through patterned woods, scouting their own location for a wedding. When the weather changes to a kind that requires shelter, the ceremony adjourns unless you know all along the stand of trees refers only to itself. Insensibly, it never had anything to do but grow. Those mornings I prayed into the understory for the music to continue its description of peace and to drown the court of judgment I could still hear over ocean water in language I might interpret and remember. And still they lived together for years. And now they live together in parables. The ending can be like the beginning. On earth, music and judgment find each other and are changed. So after all that, I bet you guys think that I never write a short poem. And it's not true. I'm going to read 2 more poems. And the last one's going to be from Fog and Smoke, but the second to last one is pretty short. Here it is. Elegy as the 4 seasons. Summer is never. Fall is again. Winter is forever. Spring is when. So happy to see all of you. We'll talk after. So this is a poem from this book, and it's also about reading, really. The supermoon starts the year off with so much light it wakes everyone up. Its whiteness disquiets. It does not shine a beam. In January, life's not as it seems, it's flat. I had my child like that, Caesarian. Caesar, the general who fell. But the day his friends knifed him, he threw his toga on like all was well. My daughter's swaddle declines into a toga. The way it shimmies in the morning shows how she slept. Morning, when dreams get erased. My daughter hates it when I leave the room. People think Emily got her name from poetry, but her Korean father chose it so his family could say it without trouble. Trouble, such a beautiful word. I wish we would say it with abandon. Once I thought we all agreed on kindness. Then I ripped a spider web because of some unmanageable fear. There's no place for chopsticks in an American drawer, my husband said. I said, just try me. Just watch me try. I'm American. I can put things anywhere. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, James. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you to Katie and Jacob for this wonderful reading this evening. Let's give them a round of applause. We have some wonderful books for sale over here. They'll be signing books. Thanks to all of you for being here tonight. And thank you to dear John for giving those wonderful introductions. Okay, everyone ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone on Zoom. Thanks again to all of you. If you could please put your chairs up against one of the walls, I'd be very grateful for you who are sitting. Thanks again.
I guess it's the least I can do since we said.
Yes, so. May I please take your photograph with John and
Yeah.
Jacob? That'd be great.
Jacob, can we get a picture?
So how does a 30 years old feel?
That's great. That's
Yeah.
Our top six.
Yeah, change is just like that. Yeah.
Vulgar person thing on a, just, people there in a mason jar or whatever.
Oh, no, you can put them standing up. That's, yeah.
The chopsticks people put in mason jars?
That's okay, about that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch spots.
Over here?
You can put things on the
Are we wonderful? Yeah, it was.